The early weigh-in podcast is back. This Saturday, after a week off, we are headed to Perth, Australia. Another 14 fight card put on by the UFC here for us. Man, killer main event. Potential number one contender as well. Carlos Ulberg taking on Dominic Reyes. Seen a couple swaps this week here, but currently Tapology has Jimmy Crute versus Ivan Ursulan back as the co-main event. Ready to get things started, man, with you. Break down the card, but as always, transparent and honesty. -4 something units from us both last week, man. After a clean sweep, the dreaded reverse sweep, just 3 plays from me. Kicked off the night -1.6 units in the hole, missing over 1.5 in the Cezinando and Donchenko fight. Multiple stoppages and things just made that one a weird one. And then Claudio Puelles, Joaquin Silva doesn't go the distance, -106. A couple moments for the fight to be finished there. Even Puelles got his spots early in that fight. But man, what I'm really horrible bet from me. Garule Costa laid a bunch of chalk on both of them, and both of them clearly lost the fight. So bad night for me, man. -4.66 units. Looking to put it behind me. Toss it over to you real quick before we get started.
Yeah, so not looking any better on my side. I had 1 unit on Dustin Stoltzfus. I told you before we started this, I'd probably make that bet again. It was a really close fight. I don't think that he should have gotten the nod or anything, right. But at +194, I think he made the fight close enough that I'm okay with that bet in the long run. My biggest disappointment was my biggest bet of the night, 2.5 units on Carlos Diego Ferreira over Alexander Hernandez. I told you, it was looking good until it wasn't. To me, Alexander Hernandez was losing the fight purely based on optics and volume. He was on his bike the entire night and then finally sat down on a punch that connected and flatlined old Carlos Diego Ferreira. Ref should have stepped in a little bit earlier than he did. But, yeah, ultimately, I guess just a bad bet for me in a pick'em fight, and that really wrecked my the rest of my card. David Martinez, the only saving grace of the card, I had him at plus money, just barely. Really, it wasn't the greatest line, considering you could have gotten him at a much better price tag pretty much the whole week. But plus money and a winner, hard to argue or hard to be upset about that. I was also on the Claudio Puelles versus Joaquin Silva. Doesn't go the distance. I thought it was going to happen in that last round, but it did not happen. They were really trying for it, though, which was nice to see, but durability was on both of their sides. Cedriquez Dumas versus Zachary Reyes. Reyes wins in round 1. I don't like knocking people for, getting nut shots and quitting, but it did seem like maybe Cedriquez was just like, I'll get my show money here and I'll get rebooked for something different. Right. Hopefully they match him up with Dricus Duplessis or something like that, I'm not a fan of him right now, but right. I'm not sure if that bet was going to cash anyway. So -4 units on the night is what it is. Looking forward to this week. Not the best card, but at least it's fights. I'm happier with a shitty fight card than no fight card. So we start off the night with Alexia Thayanara taking on Loma Lookboonmee. Thayanara's performance against Meatball Molly was impressive, but I do think it was being overvalued. Meatball's always been susceptible to a grappling game susceptible to somebody who is a high-level grappler like Thayanara is. I would still say that she's a little bit unproven, and here against Loma Lookboonmee has certainly progressed in her career as she's been in the UFC. She's managed to get to her feet. Her losses, they're aging well, in my opinion. And it's against just tough matchups, really good wrestlers like Lupi Godinez, where I think Thayanara is a great grappler. I am maybe a little concerned with how much she can continue to get the fight to the mat with her wrestling skills. But one of the drawbacks where it's making me not bet Loma Lookboonmee is, yes, if this fight stays on the feet, she should have a lot of success. But unfortunately, she's a little bit undersized for the division, and she needs that close range to actually land some of those Muay Thai strikes where she can really shine. And I think just having to close that distance against somebody like Thayanara will be a detriment to her game in the long run. So I'm going to slightly give it to Thayanara here. I want to bet Loma Lookboonmee, but I think that there's some more spots on this card I'd be more inclined to bet. So pass for me all around.
Super undersized as Loma, as always. Not very dangerous. And yeah, if you're going to take a dog shot on someone, you typically like to have somewhat of a finishing upside and things to it. In hindsight, the best Loma Luke probably looks here is a pick 'em. She probably just makes the fight close and steals the decision. Where Tayanara can, in my eyes, can win via dominant grappling, can win via finish. She's way bigger. She's a lot more physical. If she does get into her dominant positions on the mat, I do think she finishes. It's like plus 290 for her sub, which is all 8 of her finishes, but plus 260 inside the distance. You can never count out her just getting on top and raining down TKO. So with not that much of a difference, still above plus 250. I'm thinking about playing Alexia Tainara on this weekend. Funny enough, outside of our main event with Ulberg and Reyes, I think Luke Bume is the only other ranked fighter on the whole card. She's kicking it off on Saturday. Moving all the way up, though, man, 265 heavyweight division. We got Brando Perisic taking on Elisha Ellison. Leg number 1 to my parlay here is the under 1.5. I think someone's going down quick. And truth be told, I'm pretty confident. I think Brando Perisic knocks him out in the first round here. Originally a Contender Series fight when I was looking at Tapology here. Now been moved to Perth. And when you look at Perisic, who's a New Zealand native, city kickboxing guy, it's, clearly favors him. No travel, fighting with his teammates. And he's so much bigger than Ellison, man. Like 6 inches bigger than him. Actually has a striking background as well. Pretty decent work rate. Yeah, I like Perisic round 1 knockout, honestly. But low level, big guy swinging. I know someone's live to go down, so I think that definitely happens in 7.5 minutes. So I'm going to tell you Perisic, round 1 knockout for the official pick, but under 1.5 is a parlay leg we'll get into here in a little bit.
So I'm a little worried for that parlay leg because as I was breaking down this fight, I actually like Perisic by decision. I think Ellison's really willing to get on his back. BJJ's his main background. And I think that Perisic's size, I could definitely see him winding up on top, trying to finish him with some ground and pound, and Ellison just being able to kind of not get finished. Mm-hmm. And I could see a lot of top time in this fight. So I would be worried about that, but I definitely see the striking advantage on the Perisic side. I could see him catching him early. But if he doesn't get that clean knockout and he does wind up on top of him, I think that Ellison does a pretty good job of staying alive. And that would be where I'm worried about the under 1.5. I've got Perisic, but I'm more inclined to play him by decision and ultimately just pass if I were picking a method to this fight. And then whether or not I was going to bet it, I'm not going to touch it. Moving up or down to the women's bantamweight, we have Luana Carolina taking on Michelle Montague. I think Montague is sub or bust. She has pretty questionable striking. Even in these lower level fights, I've seen her kind of look like a fish out of water on the feet. I think Carolina is at least decent everywhere, and she has a ton of UFC experience. If she is able to keep this fight on the feet, ward off that initial pressure of Montague, I do think that she's going to be the clear side. And, you're getting 2-1 or better on her. This is a dog or pass situation for me. And as far as all of the fights that we've talked about up until this point, this would be the play that I would make out of these 3 fights is betting the Luana Carolina side here. Not sold on Montague yet. And if it's not Carolina that exposes her, it's like the next fight. You know what I'm saying? No matter who she's matched up against.
I get it, man. I do. We cast a big dog ticket on Luana Carolina when we first started the podcast a couple years ago. When a girl was trying to grapple her actually as well. But back then it was Loopy on 10 days notice coming up a weight class. It's now Luana going up to 135 and Michelle coming down from 145. A big girl, man.
How's she going to look having to push a grappling pace cutting to 135 for the first time, though?
It's all question marks 100%. I just like Luana is – I don't think she's long, and I think that helped her against Loopy, but I don't think she's very physical. And I think that's where she could get in trouble against Michelle, long and lanky and finds her way into clinch a lot. And if she gets there with Michelle, I think the physicality could lead to Michelle getting her positions. And if Michelle gets her positions, I think she finishes with her 7th rear naked choke.
Yeah.
I do. But yeah, I'd never lay this kind of chalk on a debuting fighter. I'm 100% with you. Fight doesn't go the distance. It's still at plus money, and Michelle's finished all 6 of them. And again, if I do think she gets her positions, I do think she can finish the fight. I don't know how heavily invested I'd be in that, but yeah, money line, it's definitely Luana Carolina. I think personally, I'm leaning more toward doesn't go the distance, and I got to feel like that's Michelle getting it done if that's the case. Saying in men's 135, Colby Thickness taking on Josiah Musasa. Musasa knocked out and choked out both as like the minus 1,000 favorite against Carlos Vera. This guy's got great athleticism, great frame. He just kind of refuses to come to the United States and gets better, wants to stay where he's at and train. And while I think that might be okay for his striking, and that might be enough to get it done here because he is way better on the feet, much faster, holds much power. What I'm worried about is, when you ground Musasa, like maybe his first level defense is good, but dude, in Africa, they don't have the black belts like they do in the rest of the world. Like that part of the game hasn't caught up yet. And so that's where Thickness kind of does his best work. And so I do think he really struggles to get the fight down. And all the minutes on the feet, I think he loses. But if he does get the fight to the mat, I think he can consolidate a long extended minutes. I think he could get into dominant positions. And so I'm personally not interested in this fight whatsoever. I still kind of feel like it's Musasa or a pass, as highly as he was touted to be. The line he had last time, now much closer, all the physical advantages. I still want to lean the Josiah Musasa side. There's just a lot of red flags that I still want another sit back and watch,
Yeah, there's a couple of these guys where I think they're the rightful favorite, but it's still sketchy. No matter what, it's going to be a little bit sketchy. As far as Thickness, his striking defense is a little bit questionable, and I do think that he's susceptible to getting bullied in the cage. And somebody like Musasa, who's a physical specimen, I think it's kind of a perfect bounce back fight after dropping that debut against Vera, who's a UFC vet.
Right.
I think that this is clearly Musasa's the side. It just is unfortunate that I have to lay minus 150 on him. I would love for there to be some hometown love come in on the Thickness side, and I could get Musasa at pick'ems because I would certainly be on him. But at this point, I think that the line's probably accurate, and it'll be a pass for me. Although I think purely off physicality and athleticism, he should be able to win this fight relatively easy. Moving up the card to the 155-pound division, we have Jamie Malarkey taking on Rolando Bedoya. I think Malarkey either outclasses him or he gets absolutely chinned.
Yeah.
And with the volume that Bedoya puts up, it does make me think that he's eventually going to find the chin of Malarkey.
Right.
So Bedoya's the side for me. I think he gets the knockout, but don't get me wrong. I would not be surprised if Malarkey is able to fight through that early adversity and really start to wear on Bedoya here. Malarkey's a big dude. He knows how to make it grindy. And if I knew that the fight was going 15 minutes, I would definitely be betting Malarkey. I just don't think it's going the full 15 minutes. How do you feel about that?
Man, honestly, you said it great. If Malarkey were to outclass him, you wouldn't be shocked. And I kind of feel the same way. Like, to me, Malarkey is the way better fighter, the way better mixed martial artist, has proven cardio. Honestly would be the only one that I think would be mixing it up any landing takedowns here. Malarkey is a solid fighter. He's just got zero striking defense. And at this point in time, the chin's really starting to fail him. And you got a guy, Orlando Bedoya, who, can be cracked himself, but is reliable to throw 100 significant strikes. And yeah, like you said, if someone's got that kind of volume and they're landing that much, and Jamie's looking that bad, you kind of feel like the TKO was coming, and you thought it'd be like plus 250 when we were talking last weekend. It's plus 300. So, maybe half unit, a unit. I kind of think we'll both probably have that on our card before the fight starts on Saturday. So yeah, Rolando Bedoya TKO for me as well. Moving on up to 170, Jonathan Mikhalif taking on Oban Elliott. This one's a tricky fight, man. You got Mikhalif cashing as a big dog last time out against Kevin Doucette, and then Oban Elliott was a massive favorite, dropped the ball last time out, and so here they have a lot closer of a line. Jonathan Mikhalif, really good user of range, his space, spams a lot of kicks. I think his jiu-jitsu is pretty decent as well. Oban, to me, just kind of feels like the more physical guy, the one who has the better cardio, better durable, willing to get on the inside, force the pressure, the pace. I am really not crazy about Oban Elliott because I don't think the guy is phenomenal anywhere. I just think he's kind of a generalist, does everything kind of good. But he's pretty durable and has a pace to him, and that can get you that can get you places in close fights like this. So no real interest in betting, honestly, man. I kind of leaned Oban earlier in the week, was thinking about it, but I don't know, man. After round one, when his confidence was broken last time out, he just looked like he didn't want to be there anymore. Like he just pretty much, you could tell mentally that he almost knew what round 2 and round 3 were going to go like, and he had no interest in making changes. He already kind of gave up and lost that fight, and so at juice, zero interest in betting Oban Elliott, but that's the side I side with ever so slightly.
Yeah, man. So I'm thinking this is Mikhalif's time to shine right here. He really surprised me coming out there and beating Kevin Doucette in his last fight. And I think we're getting a pretty favorable line here against Oban Elliott, who isn't the best wrestler, but he's also at a big size disadvantage here. So I think finding that way on the inside and trying to make it a grindy fight like we've seen in the past him have success with, it's going to be a difficult ask. Mikhalif is 5-6 inches longer than him, and I think that this is all set up for him to just kind of point fight his way to victory. I don't think he's going to be bringing the same pressure as Seok Hung Ko was bringing in the last fight. But I do think that he has the length to make it difficult for Oban Elliott to really start to get his game working. So I'm on the Mikhalif side, and considering a play on him, I would be willing to bet that after face-offs, we see Mikhalif switch to the favorite, because I do think he's going to look like a giant next to Oban Elliott. So yeah, I'm considering dropping just a unit on him. I mean, I know that this is still kind of low level isn't really the right word, but unproven, I think. We've seen plenty of times people overachieve in their debut and then, kind of have a dull second attempt in the UFC. So I'm not, I know that that's a possibility. So I wouldn't be putting too much on it, but I like Mikhalif at plus money here. Moving up to the middleweight division, Andre Petroski taking on Cam Roston. I think that the UFC is really trying to see if Roston has shored up those holes in his grappling game. And I'm worried for him here because Petroski, if he is able to find the fight to the mat, I do think that he's much better in the, grappling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu department than Torres Finney was. So the big question is whether or not he can actually get it to the ground. And if he can, I think he's going to have more success than Torres Finney did. That being said, if Roston can kind of ward off that early grappling pressure of Petroski, we've seen Petroski really die down late in fights. Now, I know he catches that second win come the third round, but he's always has a massive drop off if he doesn't have immediate success with his grappling. And I think that Roston pushes a good enough pressure that he's not going to give him that opportunity to catch that second wind. And we could see Roston actually pick up and get the finish here late second round, I'm thinking. So let's see where the line is at now. Yeah, Roston plus 158 is how I'd be looking at this fight. I'm not sure if I'm going to get there, but I certainly think that he's the side it's just a matter of whether or not Petrosky or Roston has showed up those grappling holes in his game. And it certainly looked like he did on the Contender Series. Now, I know that that's not the same caliber as Petrosky, but at least gave you a little bit of a look to see where Roston's head is at this point in his career. So Roston's the side for me.
Man, all the time we see recency bias baked into betting lines, and seeing Cam Ralston, really good performance on the Contender Series, wanting a quick turnaround in his hometown, just the stigma around Andre Petrosky. I really did think that we might see this line a lot closer, and maybe even Ralston a slight favorite. And at dog money with the grappling advantage, Petrosky was something that I was kind of eyeing before I saw the line come out. And he opened like minus 140. I kind of was where it settled out. And now it's like minus 170. Look, yeah, like you said, Torres Finney showed us that there is a blueprint to beat Cam Ralston, and just about every facet of the wrestling, the jiu-jitsu, the control. I do think Andre Petrosky's better. But yeah, you touched on the big point. Dude's a flake. He's got a ton of red flags in his durability and his cardio. Now he's the one on a semi-short notice having to fly all the way to Perth, make the weight cut, do all that kind of stuff. I don't think any of that helps the cardio, And so as people have begun to slam the Petrosky line this week, if it continues to climb, yeah, it's Cam Ralston at this point for me as well. I just hate betting when I've seen him taken down, and I know Petrosky wants to take him down. Like, I could just be ripping the ticket up in the first round because I know exactly how it's going to go. I don't know, So it's a tough one for me to call. I'm with you, though, 100% dog or pass. Prelim main event, Navajo Sterling taking on Rodolfo Bellato. Navajo Sterling is the second leg to my parlay piece here. You kind of talking me out of the under 1.5, making me want to maybe just pick Perisic straight up as a second parlay piece with Navajo Sterling. But I like Navajo Sterling here. I know his finishes haven't really translated to the UFC, but you got to remember, Israel wasn't coming in here and just putting guys away early in his career either. There was some fights, that were tough, that were drawn out. And so I kind of feel like that's the same case with this. Navajo Sterling's a guy in his young 20s, single-digit fights, and is just making huge leaps and improvements every time we're seeing him out. And, when you have the striking acclimate, the footwork, the volume, all the things that he has against someone like Bellato, who has zero striking defense, is honestly a different ref calls the Potiera and the Crute fight in round one. So, he's been knocked out by Petrino as well. I think Bellato's chinny. I think Bellato's going to walk into something here. I don't think Bellato's going to land takedowns. I don't think Bellato's got a gas tank to just, drown Sterling down the stretch. And, yeah, I think Sterling is really live to get his first UFC finish here. And I think that's why they've got Bellato flying all the way over here to have this happen. So I like Navajo Sterling to open up some people's eyes to a pretty decent prospect this Saturday.
So I'm under the impression that Bellato is going to look good for that first round, dude. Sterling's one of these guys who does have a patient game plan, and I am worried that he'll drop that first round. And if Bellato is able to get some of his tools working, I could see it, it being a little tight butthole early on. But as the fight continues, goes into the second, third round, I do think that we're going to see Sterling start to take over late and really showcase his abilities, because I do think he's a more well-rounded fighter. I'm just not a huge fan that we're going to have to wait 3 to 5 minutes to actually see that come through. So it's likely a pass for me, but I'm certainly on the Sterling side here. Moving on to the main card opener, Tom Nolan taking on Charlie Campbell. I've tried fading Nolan a couple times now, and it has not worked out in my favor. I wish this line was a little bit wider, because I think Campbell is going to do a whole lot better than what I've been hearing online. But ultimately, I do think that this line is accurate. If the Campbell side somehow got to like 2-1 or something like that, I would try and make a case for it and convince myself to play him. I think they're both long rangy guys. I forget. Oh, it was Trey Waters versus who? It just happened.
Patterson.
Patterson. And I feel like this is a similar fight where you got two taller guys in the division. They're both long. I think it's going to be a closer fight. But I played Trey Waters, and it bit me in the ass. He looked awful, and it was pretty clear that he just wasn't the side. And I feel like I could be running into the exact same scenario here with Charlie Campbell versus Tom Nolan. There will be a time where I'll fade Tom Nolan. I'm just not sure that this is going to be it. Especially if he can get the grappling going. But even on the feet, I think he's a little bit crisper than Charlie Campbell. And we've seen Campbell kind of get over, a little excited on the feet and really start to open up. So, yeah, Tom Nolan's the pick. Not enthusiastic about it, though.
I agree that if anybody's going to have grappling upside, it could be Tom Nolan. However, I think Charlie Campbell is the better striker here, has the better boxing, a better striker on the inside. Neither one of them crazy good defense, but I think Charlie Campbell's got the better striking defense in the pocket, doesn't really leave his chin up, have that tall man defense. Charlie Campbell kind of got overzealous in a finishing sequence where he hurt a guy multiple times and then walked into something. We've seen Tom Nolan deaded by Nicholas Mata, really hurt by – I'm blanking on it. Victor Martinez, taking Alex Reyes to a decision, a guy who's late 30s, a huge layoff, getting finished by everybody. So Tom Nolan really hasn't really impressed me too much, truth be honest. I think Charlie Campbell, if he were to get on the inside, holds more power, has a better boxing. I'm not the biggest fan of this one being a little bit short notice for him, and all the travel and the weight cut and everything that comes with fighting in Australia. So the Trevor Peak round 3 was a little tricky, and so round 3, when you've got to make that travel and everything, Charlie Campbell plus money is one of the more tempting money lines for me this week. But if it was a Vegas card, I'd definitely do it. Just a short notice and things. I think I'm gonna. If it gets up into the close to 2-1s, my hand will be forced. But as of right now, rooting for Charlie Campbell. Going to be a pass, though. Moving on up in the main card at heavyweight, Louis Sutherland taking on Justin Tafa. Justin Tafa, man, just like his brother, about as one-dimensional as it gets, man. A counter striker, holds big power, but doesn't throw a lot of volume, doesn't go first, has zero offensive or defensive wrestling. And a guy like Louis Sutherland is super imposing, super physical. If he can get takedowns, I think he can make it look super easy. As far as on the feet, you're playing with fire. I don't fancy his chances on the feet. I think Justin Tafa is a lot faster than him and could land one of those counter punches. But I've seen Justin Tafa outstruck at range by Jared Bandera for 15 minutes. And so I think just about anybody can do it. So maybe the easiest fight on the whole card for me to stay away from. I think either guy in hindsight could look a favorite. I think Tafa could knock him out earlier. I think Louis Sutherland could land takedowns and make it look easy. So not the best read here, but I do think someone's getting finished. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly done betting anybody with the last name Tafa. Honestly, any of the heavyweight guys from that part of the country, that part of the world, I'm done betting, man. I think Sutherland is at least serviceable on the feet. And yeah, like you said, God forbid he winds up on top. You can just rip that Tafa ticket right up. Tafa just so awful off of his back, refuses to round out his game. And it's really frustrating when you want to back somebody because he does have real fight-ending potential on the feet. But it's just, you can't bet a one-dimensional MMA fighter in the UFC. And he's the definition of that. So it's Sutherland or pass here. Like you said, probably a pass, but Sutherland, if I could get, that plus 100 on DraftKings is kind of looking tempting, but I'll ultimately, I'm hoping that I can keep myself off of it. Sutherland would be the pick for me though. Moving down to the welterweight division up on the card, Jake Matthews taking on Neil Magny. Matthews minus 400 is wild, dude.
Wow.
That's crazy. I think he looked awesome against Chidi Njokuani in Nashville. Neil Magny is not Chidi Njokuani, man. Neil Magny, the king of making fights awkward. And unless Matthews can get him down and finish him, the only way I could see him finishing Neil Magny, I've heard people talk about him knocking him out. I've heard people talking about the submission. And ultimately, unless he gets an arm triangle, I could see Neil Magny tap into an arm triangle. But outside of that, man, I think that this fight is close. So it is Magny as the side for sure, or find a Matthews sub prop that you like. But holy hell, Matthews minus 400, one of the worst lines on the card, in my opinion.
Can I fancy you a Neil Magny decision plus 600?
That sounds good to me. I don't want to get too greedy, but that sounds good to me.
I know. And the reason I'm okay taking it, Jake Matthews, typically a guy who's never let his cardio fail him. You know, he's been to decision plenty of times. He has 22 UFC fights. The dude's been only finished 4 times, and that's Sean Brady, Kevin Lee, you know, like back in the day, James Vick. I mean, so I don't know, man. I don't think Neil Magny's finished him. Jake Matthews seems to have hit a stride in the prime of his career at like 30 years old. But I'm with you, man. I don't really see him finishing Neil Magny. On the feet, probably not so much, man. He doesn't hit like a Michael Morales. He doesn't hit like a Carlos Prates. And even on the mat, like the guys that's running through Neil Magny, Shavkat, Gilbert Burns, like these are great guys. Like Mike Malott, great jiu-jitsu. I've seen him have 2 rounds of control and not submit Neil Magny with dominant positions. I don't think Jake Matthews has the jiu-jitsu of him. And so, yeah, I kind of feel like as I've gotten closer to the fight, I kind of wanted to write Neil Magny off, a guy who's 40 years old, who's not dangerous at all, really, and also his durability is failing him. I just feel like overall it's a bad combination for your age. But when you got a guy who's not necessarily dangerous in front of you, when I know Magny can go 15 minutes, and if he goes 15 minutes, it's 1,000% a close fight. Plus 600 is extremely hard for me to stay off of. So I'll be checking the books for Saturday. Probably a little small bet, but I'll ride with Neil Magny. Probably one of my biggest money makers on the whole UFC roster, honestly.
Side note: Oban Elliott just pulled out of his fight. I was about to cash that Meek Khalif ticket.
You were. Jack Jenkins, Ramon Tavares. I know I said in the intro earlier today, I believe yesterday, this was listed as the co-main event. Kind of feel like Jimmy Crute deserves that in the spot where he's at. But yeah, Jack Jenkins, Ramon Tavares. Both UFC losses for Jenkins, kind of fluky, hurt in both of them. So now returning off of being out with some injuries. I think he's the only one that has any offensive grappling success here. I think he can have big calf kick success. I think he's a lot more durable than Ramon Tavares. I think he's just a better fighter. Ramon just kind of got fast hands and really good boxing, and after weight issues, he's having to come up to 145. A couple days ago, his Ring doorbell catches him getting shot at in Florida. You know, he's already had issues with, I believe, his family and needing to move out. And so you got a guy who's got potentially out of octagon issues, having to fly to Australia in a new weight class, taking on, one of the more popular Australian fighters, one of the more popular Australian prospects in Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins, honestly, really been tested in the UFC so far, man. Gabriel Santos, Chepe Mariscal, even Jamal Emmers, like pretty decent fighters. And I just kind of feel like Ramon Tavares has good hands and has good boxing and really doesn't have much after that. We've seen CD Flash knock him, lose to Davey Grant, an old guy. So Jenkins was a guy that I was kind of tempted to parlay with Navajo Sterling. But coming off those injuries and things, I want to see him back in action, see how he performs, but I have no interest betting the underdog here. This is Jack Jenkins all day for me.
Can I interest you in a Jenkins decision prop? Plus 145. You turn this minus 300 into a plus 145. I think Tavares is extremely durable. I think that Jack Jenkins is just going to kind of chip away at him for 15 minutes. Yeah, man. I don't know. This is Jack Jenkins piecing him up for 15 minutes all day in my head. The over 2.5 is like minus 180, something like that. And I think Jenkins is the clear side. So plus 145 on FanDuel for the Jenkins decision. That's how I'd look to play this fight for sure.
I like it.
All right, moving on to the co-main event. Jimmy Crute taking Ivan Ursulin. Truth be told, I just think that this is a trap fight, man. I ain't paying 2-1 for Jimmy Crute.
Right.
I'm still not sold. I'm still not sold on him as a fighter, especially after him retiring for just that short amount of time. And paying a premium for him in this spot has zero interest for me. I think Urslan has actually performed pretty decent in the 2 losses that he has in the UFC, and he's kind of due for a win. And I just feel like this is an opportunity for Jimmy Crute and
Yeah.
drop this fight right here. So it's super sus to me. I think I'm just going to lay off. But if I was gun to head having to pick somebody, I'm picking Urslan here. I don't like Crute as a favorite at all. So
Funny enough, this was the first fight on the whole card I broke down. Actually, last Friday at work on some free time, started looking into this one. Ivan Urslan was plus 200, and I'd have to go back and look, but I was pretty confident Jimmy Crute was going to submit and beat Marcin Prachnio last time out. But I still remember him, and I went back and watched it. Wasn't impressed, dude. Granted, he might have been trying to get his feet wet after some time off, but he just looked slow. He just looked slow to me, man. And again, kind of desperate shooting the takedowns. It was kind of evident to me that if there was somebody better in front of him, they weren't coming as easy, and he was working hard for them. And so Ivan Urslan was plus 200 last Friday. Let the weekend go through, no fights, didn't look at anything. Revisit the stuff on Monday. He's plus 155. And I'm like, shit, man. So, he's plus 170 now. The hometown parlay people, as we get close to fight time, I might get close to plus 200 again. But yeah, dude, Crute looks slow. Crute is not durable anymore. He's retired. He's got out of octagon issues. Cardio is horrible. I get it. He's got a massive, massive grappling edge here. But in terms of boxing and power, I think Ivan Urslan matches him, if not has got his number in both of those departments. So, like you said, it's about time for Jimmy Crute to Jimmy Crute. And this is dog or pass for me. I hate that I've missed the number so much, but if by fight time by Saturday this is back up close to 2-1 underdog, I might pull the trigger on Ivan Urslan.
you can get Urslan plus 180 on MGM right now.
I think it's
that
heading
might be
back
enough.
up. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's heading back up that way. So I'm gonna stay a little bit patient. I like it though. That's the side for me clearly, man. And Carlos Ulberg taking on Dominic Reyes at 205 main event. I'm not ready to really say that Dominic Reyes is back, man. I watched back his last couple fights. I don't know if you can get any more worse of a game plan than Nikita Krylov. Like, for the 2.5 minutes that fight lasted, he just kind of like blitzed at old Dominic Reyes. Like, I mean, the hands were low. It was all time bad for me. Anthony Smith, you might as well just throw that out the window for me, man. And Dustin Jacoby, I don't know. It's a good win, but Dustin Jacoby is never a top 5, maybe not even ever a top 10 fighter, and another kind of, had Reyes on the fence and just rushed in and caught a little counter shot. I'm not ready to say that Dominic Reyes is back, that his head's still not on the whole John Jones situation, that he's focused on the belt, that his chin's healed. I do think that he's got volume, that he's got good cardio to make this fight close, but I think he could make one mistake and the fight be over here. Where Ulberg has such good footwork, he's got the big cage to work around. He has no issue making the fight boring if it means him winning, and I just feel like he's going to pick and poke at Dominic Reyes until he's forced to kind of, I don't know, close the distance to force some action, and when he does, he's going to catch probably one of that short check left hook, and that'd be the end of it. So I just feel like Dominic Reyes is in a striking battle with the guy who's got the better footwork, the better technique, the better speed, and over the course of 25 minutes, I think he's gonna slip up. So I like Carlos Ulberg by knockout. Not real confident on that over or under though. Any thoughts on the main event?
Yeah, man. Dominic Reyes is the side here, man. I think Ulberg kind of sucks ass. And I think on top of that, we've never seen him in 25 minutes. I think that
Yep.
Dominic Reyes will push a pace. I think that Dominic Reyes being a southpaw is really going to work in his favor because it's taking away the leg kicks of Ulberg that he relies pretty heavily on. Reyes has the length, he has the 25-minute experience, and he has the power to, I think, completely outclass him. I'm kind of excited to be on the side of him. I've got him in the fantasy league, but it's not just the fantasy league bias, dude. Like, I actually think outside of Reyes getting chinned, this fight is much closer than the line is suggesting. And I think when you look back on the careers of both of these guys, it's been some pretty favorable matchups for Carlos Ulberg and not over 25 minutes, where Reyes, if he can avoid getting chinned, so there's always that chance. I think there's a really good shot that he wins, man. Like, I think that he has the potential to go out there and just kind of prove that he's I guess ready for another title shot. 205 is pretty wide open, so gets another win here. It's all for him to grab. So give me Reyes here. I like him just straight up. I probably like him by decision mostly, but I think that a lot of the tools that Ulberg's been able to rely on against these slower, shorter heavyweights that he's been fighting are going to be negated here by Dominic Reyes. So give me Dom Reyes here.
I like it. I like it. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. It's all 14 fights going down at UFC Perth on Saturday. Like you talked about, light heavyweight division wide open at the moment, and next week's UFC 320 with the light heavyweight strap up for grabs. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with us always. Keep an eye on Twitter for the plays. Like and subscribe. We'll see y'all again next week.
Peace.